your wife accusing a guy of sexual harassment, right? That's why it's no laughing matter, sexual harassment.
Justin Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, grilled on Blake Lively in contentious interview.
Say with certainty that your client did not harass her?
I can say that with certainty that my client is one of the most honorable people.
Get ready for a tale so twisted it threatens to shake Hollywood to its core. Blake Lively's once untouchable reputation is now clouded by whispers of scandal, tied to a legal battle stranger than fiction. Fans, insiders, and power players alike are watching closely, wondering just how deep this story goes.
Huge win for Justin Baldoni. He sat down and chatted in a new podcast interview. And he had a lot to say and wanted to emphasize that Justin Baldoni is truly a good guy. And that he was not happy with all of the negative press that Blake Brown was getting around the release of their...
Behind the polished glamour of Hollywood, a storm has been brewing, quiet at first, but powerful enough to rattle the very balance of Tinseltown. What began as whispers has erupted into a controversy so volatile that executives, PR giants, and even A-list stars are scrambling for cover. This isn't just about a lawsuit. It's a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the machinery of fame, where money, influence, and survival collide in ways the public almost never sees.
In her own CRD complaint and in her own initial filed complaint, it says that everything was fine from that point on. So now we're really limited to nothing more ultimately than was there a smear campaign.
Yes. Okay.
In the CRD complaint and in the first filing of the lawsuit with the Southern District of New York, the allegations in the complaint say once the 17-point list was agreed to, everything from then on was fine.
It all started with what seemed like a straightforward story. Blake Lively, Hollywood's golden girl and half of a powerhouse couple, stepped forward with claims of harassment on the set of a major blockbuster. Normally, such an allegation would send shockwaves across the industry. But what stunned observers wasn't the accusation itself. It was the speed of the fallout. Practically overnight, Justin Baldoni, her co-star and once respected rising figure, was recast as the villain. His reputation shattered, his career dangling by a thread.
The complaint was done in coordination with the Times. I don't have evidence of that, but I assume that the story was timed to go right when it was filed.
15 hours. A lot of those are sleep hours.
Okay.
For those that sleep. A lot of those are on a holiday weekend on a Friday night. Yes. At 9 o'clock at night. For those
that is, I will give you that. That is a shady move. If you're working on a story for months and you're giving somebody notice on a Friday night, that's a pretty...
Justin Baldoni's sudden fall from grace felt like something out of a high-octane Hollywood thriller. One day, he was a respected figure on the rise. The next, he was branded a pariah. But instead of retreating quietly, Justin struck back, filing a staggering $400 million defamation lawsuit. At first, the move seemed absurd. How could allegations from one film set escalate into such an astronomical counterattack? The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. This was no ordinary Hollywood dispute. Behind the scenes, one of the industry's most powerful agencies, WME, helmed by the shrewd Ari Emanuel, made a decisive move. Almost instantly, they cut ties with Justin after the rumors hit. Overnight, he lost his agency, his support system, his lifeline. To the outside world, it looked like Justin was being erased in real time. But his lawsuit made one thing clear. He wasn't going down without a fight.
Upload of documents. Blake leverages her friendship with Taylor Swift against Baldoni. She says, I'm like Khaleesi, Game of Thrones, and my husband Ryan and my best friend Taylor are my dragons. They inspire me. They support me. Well, Taylor has been silent. Not a peep.
Ari Emanuel soon weighed in, appearing on a high-profile podcast where he showered praise on Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, while painting Justin Baldoni in a far darker light. To casual listeners, it sounded like a principled stance. But Hollywood insiders knew better. In this town, morality often bows to money. Ryan Reynolds is one of the industry's most bankable stars, with blockbuster franchises and endorsement deals that mint billions. By extension, Blake's stock soars alongside his. Justin, meanwhile, couldn't compete with that kind of financial clout. The real shock, however, came when Baldoni's legal team dropped a bombshell, over 100 pages of private texts and internal communications. Far from idle chatter, they suggested a carefully orchestrated PR campaign designed to bury Justin's reputation. What looked like a personal dispute was starting to resemble a calculated takedown.
Been silent. Not a peep from Taylor. You know what I mean? Look, question for the women out there. If you tell your best friend you were sexually harassed by a guy, wouldn't you hope that that dragon would breathe a little fire on that jerk in your defense? Morris's CEO, Ari Emanuel, made it seem like a moral act of loyalty, like that exists in Hollywood. He heaped praise on Ryan and Blake as soulfully beautiful people.
The leaked texts painted an even stranger picture. Blake Lively allegedly referred to herself as a mother of dragons, claiming Ryan Reynolds and even Taylor Swift were her fire-breathing allies ready to torch Justin Baldoni's career. The phrase sounded surreal, like a line from a fantasy novel, but in Hollywood, where narrative is power, it wasn't so far-fetched. More unsettling was the implication that this strategy had been brewing for months, a chess game with Baldoni as the cornered pawn. Ryan, one of the so-called dragons, made his allegiance clear, publicly backing Blake and even slipping in a barbed joke on Saturday Night Live. But the other dragon, Taylor Swift, stayed silent. For someone known for turning conflicts into anthems and headlines, her silence was deafening. If she truly stood with Blake, why hadn't she said a word? Her refusal to engage only fueled doubts about how solid Blake's claims really were.
Aware of anybody, frankly, whose wife has been sexually harassed and has made jokes about that.
And another twist came when the New York Times found itself accused of being more than just a bystander. According to Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, the paper had been preparing a damaging expose for months, only to drop it late on a Friday night of a holiday weekend, perfectly timed to maximize chaos. Baldoni had less than 15 hours to respond before the story went nuclear. By Monday, the public verdict was in. Baldoni was the villain, and Blake the wronged heroine. To many, it looked like a masterclass in the media ambush. Release the bomb when few are watching, then let the narrative harden before a defense can be mounted. But Justin didn't take the hit quietly. His legal team countered with a sweeping defamation suit, not just against Blake, but against the Times itself. If he proves a major newspaper knowingly took part in a coordinated smear, it could reshape the boundaries of accountability between Hollywood power players and the press.
Was not very positive about the alleged nose job recipient. Alleged.
The stakes in this clash are monumental, not only financially but reputationally. An institution like the New York Times, which has spent decades cultivating credibility, now faces the risk of a lawsuit that could expose willful malice or coordinated deceit. A blow like that would reverberate far beyond Hollywood gossip and potentially redefine the media's role in reporting celebrity controversies. But to understand how it all reached this boiling point, you have to rewind to the very film set where the trouble began. It started with a hotly anticipated adaptation of a beloved novel that paired Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni as co-stars. Early press releases painted a picture of effortless chemistry, but whispers soon surfaced that not all was well behind the scenes. Blake later claimed that tensions escalated into such a hostile environment that she felt compelled to take legal action. Yet Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, countered that if her allegations were genuine, she would have filed official HR complaints or sought immediate intervention, neither of which occurred. Instead, he argues, Blake was quietly gathering, or even manufacturing evidence while working with a PR machine to massage the narrative. This strategy was allegedly hinted at in the infamous Dragon texts, where Blake compared herself to a fantasy queen commanding winged beasts. A comical metaphor that nonetheless reflected her belief that star power and strategic alliances could end a career before the accused had a chance to defend himself. Friedman further claims that much of Blake's so-called evidence relied on vague, unnamed accusers whose accounts were so flimsy that no major outlet dared publish them. Yet, the New York Times ultimately ran a bombshell story that painted Baldoni as guilty. According to Baldoni's camp, this only happened because Times reporters had essentially locked arms with Blake's team to craft a narrative guaranteed to maximize intrigue, outrage, and readership. The timing of the publication bolstered that theory. It dropped late on a holiday weekend, minimizing Baldoni's ability to respond and locking public perception in place before he could react. Meanwhile, Behind the scenes, another force was shaping the fallout: WME, one of Hollywood's most powerful agencies. The agency swiftly cut ties with Baldoni once Blake's allegations went public. Friedman argues this wasn't about principle but about money. Ryan Reynolds, Blake's husband, is not only a blockbuster star but also a wildly successful entrepreneur, with brands like Aviation Gin and Mint Mobile that make him invaluable to agencies, studios, and corporate backers. To WME, standing by Baldoni would have been like gambling on an uncertain player over a guaranteed cash cow. Ari Emanuel, WME's chief strategist, made his stance clear on a popular podcast. He praised Blake and Ryan while hedging on Justin with carefully worded remarks. If the allegations are true, then Baldoni is a terrible person. The phrasing was intentional, leaving room for doubt while inflicting maximum reputational harm. In Hollywood, where a single rumor can substitute for proof, Emanuel's comments were enough to cement Baldoni's image as a pariah in the court of public opinion. From there, Baldoni's projects began to crumble under the weight of speculation as the controversy blurred the line between serious legal dispute and absurd PR theater. It became a surreal mix of lawsuits, backroom deals, and larger questions about how power, money, and influence collide to shape the narratives the world consumes. The circus reached new heights when Ryan Reynolds referenced the lawsuit during Saturday Night Live's 50th anniversary special. What was likely intended as a wink at the headlines quickly became one of the most polarizing moves of his career. Viewers, including many who had long admired both Ryan and Blake, called the moment tasteless and tone-deaf. After all, if Blake's claims of victimhood were as severe as she alleged, reducing them to a punchline only deepened the sense that this was less about justice and more about performance. If Blake's allegations of harassment and emotional distress were genuine, why would her husband trivialize them on national television, turning something traumatic into a punchline? In doing so, Ryan Reynolds effectively made the entire matter seem less serious. Hollywood watchers were quick to label the move desperate and out of touch, calling it one of the worst PR missteps in recent memory. Even at the star-studded SNL after-party, several celebrities reportedly kept their distance, wary of being pulled into the orbit of an increasingly messy lawsuit dominating negative headlines. That's the danger of public perception. Once the narrative begins to fracture, doubt creeps in. When an alleged victim's camp treats trauma like entertainment, sympathy quickly turns into skepticism. Fans who once rushed to support Blake started asking pointed questions. Why had Taylor Swift, normally quick to defend friends, remained silent? Why hadn't Blake filed official complaints through proper channels during filming? Why did the lawsuit erupt precisely at the moment most damaging to Justin Baldoni's career? And why had her PR team coordinated with the New York Times to drop a damning article over a holiday weekend, if not to hinder his ability to respond? The most unsettling question of all soon emerged. Could this case represent not just a personal dispute, but the deliberate weaponization of the Me Too movement for professional gain? A chilling possibility that threatened to undermine the credibility of genuine victims everywhere. Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, seized on this unease, dismantling Blake's narrative step by step while dropping revelation after revelation. He claimed text messages between Blake's legal team and media contacts showed they had been sitting on damaging material for months, waiting to release it at the exact moment it would inflict maximum damage. The objective, according to Friedman, was clear: ensure Baldoni's name trended worldwide in the worst possible context, so studios, producers, and advertisers would abandon him instantly. The strategy initially worked. Doors slammed shut. Film projects evaporated. Endorsement deals quietly disappeared. But rather than retreat, Friedman responded with a scorched earth counteroffensive, a $400 million defamation lawsuit. The figure was staggering, signaling that this was not about money but about total vindication. His legal stance was uncompromising. No settlement would suffice unless it came with a public admission that the accusations were incomplete at best and malicious at worst. In other words, Baldoni would not accept silence. He wanted the narrative itself overturned. The stakes of such a lawsuit extended far beyond one actor's career. It was a warning shot to Hollywood. Proceed with caution before weaponizing unverified allegations because the legal boomerang could prove catastrophic. But the risks cut both ways. If Baldoni lost, it could embolden others to exploit public opinion as a weapon, knowing that headlines can destroy faster than investigations ever can. Blake's team, unwilling to back down, launched an aggressive counterstrike. They filed subpoenas demanding Baldoni's phone records spanning more than 2 years, a sweeping fishing expedition that could expose everything from personal messages to petty arguments, hoping to find anything that could undermine his credibility or shift momentum. Friedman, however, was equally relentless, filing demands of his own for all communications between Blake, her attorneys, and her media contacts, seeking to prove what he had alleged from the start: that this wasn't simply a case of harassment, but a carefully orchestrated PR war disguised as justice. Friedman's demand for all communications between Blake, her PR team, and the New York Times set the stage for a potential bombshell. If approved, it could expose